Well, some of our heirloom vegetable varieties are finally coming into production. And if you'll remember, an heirloom variety is designated so if it's an open pollinated variety, not a hybrid, and if it was introduced or has history of being introduced prior to 1940s. And the reason that particular year is chosen is because that's the time when hybrid type varieties started coming into existence, or at least being released. Now the squash, we have 4 varieties here behind me, and I wanted to go over each of the varieties, and I'm going to have to use my notes here because there's some pretty strange names, and that's been a lot of the fun of growing these heirlooms, is because there's so many strange things from different countries even that we're trying in our garden. Now the first one I want to show you here in the basket is called Zucchini rampicante, and it's referred to as trombone or trombocino squash. And you can see it kind of gets that name from the shape. It's a lime color, and the vine is actually very aggressive, and we had to trellis it, and it grows a little better if you can trellis it and let these squash hang off. Now there's really not much history given in the records, but it's a zucchini-like fruit that is best harvested at between 12 and 15 inches. It's got this S shape, and really the best time to pick it is a little bit smaller before it sizes up. And then one of the neat things about this cultivar is that when you boil it or steam it, it doesn't become watery as much as some of the other zucchinis, and it takes about 58 days for it to really come into production. Now our second cultivar is a familiar looking plant. It's the zucchini type growth habit, and it is a Ronde Denisi zucchini. But the interesting thing about this zucchini is that it's round, and we have some here that are really about the optimum size to pick. It's recommended that they're picked about 5 inches in diameter, but I actually like them smaller like this right as they're becoming pollinated, and they can steam, and you can just steam the whole plant, or the whole vegetable, excuse me, versus slicing it up. Now the history in this one is it's from France and Italy. It will actually bruise very easily, especially when it's younger, so you want to be careful. And again, it's eaten steamed or raw, or just about however you can come up with your imagination on using zucchini. Now the next variety over is a little bit more familiar in shape, but the color's a little bit different. It's almost a variegated color. It has the lines of darker and green, darker and lighter green on the zucchini. And this particular variety is called Zucchini Cocazelle, and it's a bush type. It's a little bit smaller plant, although we have about 2 to 3 plants per each of our mounds. Again, it's a 45-day cultivar. This one particular company that we got it from has listed the variety and sold it for over 40 years just because of its flavor. It's not quite as strong as some zucchini. And again, if you'll pick them a little bit smaller, they're real tasty as a steamed vegetable. Now the last one I want to show you is 65-day variety, and so it's just now blooming and coming into production. A lot of our earlier flowers dropped off because they were the male flowers, so we're just now seeing some of the female flowers start, and this one is called Lagenaria or Lagenaria longissima, and it's an Italian heirloom, and it's going to be one that gets real big and long, similar to the trombone, not quite as curved, but it's one that you want to pick a little bit earlier before it gets too mature again, so you'll get the optimum flavor. And it too, like the trombone, is best grown in a trellis so you can support the vines. So these are all squash related, and anytime you've grown zucchini, I'm sure you know that they're very prolific. Well, now Barb's got a great idea to show us another way to use these zucchini squash.
A lot of times you can have trouble finding a recipe for the kind of summer squash that you've grown. Fortunately, in all these cases, no matter which one you've grown, you can in all probability use any of the recipes for summer squash, whether it calls for zucchini or yellow squash or whatever. They're pretty much interchangeable. Now, some of the squash we have here are a little bit unusual. They're the ones that have been grown in the Oklahoma Gardening Studio. This one is a trombone squash, the heirloom zucchini, a couple of summer squash, and another one of the heirloom zucchini. But you notice that you get a lot of different different shapes on these, so some of them may not actually work as well in certain recipes if you're trying to use this particular one whole. The recipe that we're going to use today is for stuffed zucchini, and so we're going to try using the heirloom squash. Now, in general, the same recipe could be used whether you use the heirloom or whether you use one of the other summer squash. First step is simply going to be to cut off both ends. If you're using the regular zucchini type squash. With the heirloom squash, we're also going to cut off the stem end, but cutting off the other end is not going to be quite as simple, because you'll notice that it goes in, we have the indentation, and so to cut around that and get that all out, we're going to lose a lot of liquid. We're going to have a hole in the stuffed zucchini that we're going to make. You could go ahead and do that if you wanted to slice it this way, and depending on the shape of your squash, that may be your choice. This one, for instance, is more oval, and as a result, if I was going to stuff this one, I probably would cut this way rather than across the center that way. This one's got a nice round shape though, and so we're going to go ahead and try and cut through the center of this. And then simply take a spoon and sort of operate the same way you would if you were going to work on a cantaloupe. You're going to take the center out. If you find that it's a little bit more mature than you thought, because smaller ones will have smaller seeds, and you've got a lot of large seeds in here, you may want to go ahead and take away some of the seeds. Overall, though, the closer you can come to getting everything in your body that was grown here, with the exception of the stem and those kinds of things, the better off you're going to be nutritionally and also fiber-wise. Now we're going to try and peel this down or core it out so that we have about 1/4 of an inch of shell left, without trying to poke a hole in the very center, because we want to make sure that we do have the boat intact so that we'll be able to stuff it after a while. A lot of times we have a lot more of these squash coming off at one time than we normally would like to be able to eat at one time. You can go around the neighborhood with them up to a point. Then you may want to look at some of the alternatives for preservation, such as canning, freezing, or pickling. Zucchini can in general be used for most of the cucumber pickle recipes, so that gives you a wide range again of recipes for use there. Okay, we've got this cored out. If we had a little more time, I'd probably go ahead and do it a little bit more thoroughly. Now these we're going to set aside for a little bit. We won't need them for a while, but we want to cook the core. In general, we're just going to real coarsely chop this. And again, very coarsely, because it's going to be inside with a lot of other things, and we don't need to have it very finely. You want to pretty much get it small enough so that each piece is one bite and somebody doesn't have to cut it up. But other than that, unless you've got feeding it to children with really small mouths, you don't need to worry about chopping it very finely at all. Okay, this is then going to go into a 1.5 to 2 quart casserole. Now in part, it's going to depend on the size of the dish. Or the size of the squash that you're using as to what size dish we're going to use. This is a microwave recipe, so you do want to use a dish or a container that is microwave safe. To that, we're going to add 1 small onion, also very coarsely chopped, a cup of mushrooms, 1/2 cup of chopped celery, and about 1 medium tomato. Now again, leave the peel on there, take the core out, chop it real coarse, and let it go. This we're then going to cover either with the lid to the pan or with some kind of a plastic wrap or a wax paper. Put it in the microwave for 4 to 6 minutes, stirring it once during that time. The length of time will depend on just how big and how much food you have here and the power on your microwave. Once this comes out of the microwave, you'll need to drain it a bit, because there will be a lot of liquid that will come out of the vegetables. At that point, we're going to add them back to our container. We're also going to add some breadcrumbs. That's 3/4 of a cup of breadcrumbs or cracker crumbs. We have 1 egg. Now, ideally, we'd let this cool just a little bit before we add the egg. Otherwise, it's going to cook before you get it in the microwave. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese, 1/2 cup of cheddar, and I'd prefer to use a low-fat variety of cheddar, about 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper, and 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of salt. These are then simply going to stir together to blend them well. I'll also add to that 1 tablespoon of margarine, and that will melt in the warm ingredients. Once these are blended together, we'll get our boats that we prepared earlier and simply mound them. Now divide it up. Try not to pack it too tightly. Try to mound it in there and get it fairly evenly divided. And then to the top of that, we're going to sprinkle about just a little bit of Parmesan cheese to help give it a little more, paprika to help give it a little bit more color. These would all then be filled, would go back in the microwave for 5 to 7 minutes, again depending on the size of your microwave oven. And they do need to be covered in the microwave again to help them steam. You're going to cook them until the shells become tender. That's the reason you didn't want the shells too thick to start with. This is a recipe that could be used with any of the shapes of summer squash you're growing this year, as long as they're ones that can be hollowed out. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.